Welcome, beer man, to GOATQUEST.
The beer's worth the drive.
A little sip, just a little maintenance sip to make sure we overflow. And then, one for the road. Yes, indeed. Back at it on the microphone. It's a GOATQUEST afternoon. And we're looking at the greatest of all time in a position that you and I both know and love and played. So we've got some hands-on experience in this particular.
I did play a little bit of running back.
At every level.
Very little. No, not at every level.
That's right. At
Very
every
little.
level. Even Elkton Pigeon Bayport.
Yes, that was the most.
Little shout out to the thumb.
To the tum.
All those thumb fans out there, all 6 of them are going to get their shout out today.
There's a lot more than 6 of them. Come on.
How many of them are listening? Have you done the social media circulation to the thumb of Michigan?
Yeah, there's probably 15 guys that have reached out.
Okay.
That are watching the podcast.
All right.
My buddy Gooch, my friends Chris Eby and Jug. Remember Jug?
Oh, yeah.
Jim Warren.
So the reason we're smiling is because back in the day when Tom was playing for the Detroit Lions as both a fullback in front of Barry Sanders and then a linebacker backing up Chris Spielman and others, he used to take us up to his former stomping grounds, Elkton Pigeon Bayport area, up in Caseville, Michigan. In the thumb, for people who aren't from Michigan, we put our hands up and show off the thumb.
For 4th of July.
Yeah. Lake Huron, beautiful. I mean, it's gorgeous, but there was always some chicanery, tomfoolery,
Sure.
chaos at the Bella Vista. Usually is where that's centered. Herschel's.
Is that what that was called?
Remember, the bar was Herschel's.
Oh, okay.
Inside the Bella
that's
Vista.
stuff that you remember. I've only been there 100 times. I would have never known it was called the Herschel's. I just called it the Bella Vista. Yeah, I used to bring up Shane Bonham and Mike Wells and a couple defensive tackles or defensive ends.
Yeah, no running backs though.
No running backs.
And we are going to talk about running backs today because you played in front of one of the best. You were in meetings with him on a regular basis. So just give me a quick snapshot of life in a room with Barry Sanders, one of the GOATs.
Best guy you ever met. I don't have one bad word to say about him. He wasn't actually a vocal leader, but he was a leader with his play. He was absolutely amazing. He was the most gifted athlete that I've ever seen at any position.
You told me about, and I found this to be like the most visually referenceable element that you've ever confided in me, that when he would cut and you would be watching him from the sideline, he was so much lower to the ground from a leverage point than any other human being you had ever seen. You couldn't believe that he could stay and not have
when he
not go
ran
down.
And he was cutting, he was about this tall. Literally, about this tall. I think I might have mentioned in a previous episode, but in training camp, there'd be 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 people there watching us, and we used to have to do one-on-one drills and cover Barry. And
Not fun.
And you'd always be in line, so you're running backs 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, sometimes you'd look and Barry was 4, and I'd look 1, 2, shit, I'm 4, and so I'd tie my shoe and let somebody else get in front of me. They're like, I don't want to guard Barry. So I'm not guarding him. Oh, I'd make you look so stupid in practice. Made everybody look stupid. Nobody could cover him.
The classic line order game, trying to make sure you don't have to get pinned one-on-one on an island.
Absolutely.
With Barry Sanders.
Yeah, it's already a tough enough sport, much less covering Barry in the middle of the field. I mean, it's impossible. It was impossible.
Well, you had to feel pretty lucky being on that team with one of the great. You had to know after him winning the Heisman Trophy.
I had to feel lucky making the team.
Yeah. Being a 2,000-yard guy at Oklahoma State, him winning the Heisman Trophy, you knew you were amongst greatness at that point. But we, as a generation, growing up in football, got to see most of them.
Yeah.
Right? Most of the great running backs of all time that are going to be on this list were either finishing their careers. There's only really one, and he's on the top of everybody's list, that was probably significantly before us. Most of these guys that we're going to be talking about today, Walter Payton, Eric Dickerson, Earl Campbell, go right on down the line. there's going to be a lot of talk of guys who were right in the middle of our youth.
Yeah.
Very lucky to see these guys.
Yeah. Difficult. I mean, even when we're talking about all-time GOATs, it's tough to put someone in any position that we haven't seen play. Like we were talking about, we're going to talk about that later, the all-time teams, and Yale's on there, won 16 national championships or something.
Yeah.
I never saw them play.
Yeah, 16 national championships when there was like 9 programs of relevance.
Correct.
And no black people could play football.
Correct. Yeah. That's a little skewed.
That's a little bit of a stacked deck.
Yeah.
For Yale and Princeton
Yes.
in the 19 teens.
But they do have the national championships, but different time.
Yes.
Different
yes.
time.
Well, let's start with today, because all of a sudden in 2024, when it looked like Patrick Mahomes and Tom Brady and the dink and dunk spread the field offenses were becoming all the rage, it now seems like, close your eyes and snap your fingers, like the running game has reemerged as super important to winning football games again.
It's still a passing league. But look what the Lions did the other day in that last score that they had against Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They ran it 8-9 times in a row.
Yeah.
When you can do that, you're not putting the ball in the air. You're not going to lose it. There's, you hope nobody fumbles.
And problematic for us looking at GOATs, you and I just talked about this. A lot of these guys that you're looking at have to split time with another guy.
Yeah. Look at Montgomery. Look at, yeah. He's not going to get 30 carries a game.
Right. Is Gibbs ever going to get in the conversation for even a Pro Bowl if he's got to split carries every game with Montgomery, who's going to score quite a few touchdowns?
When I was watching the game the other night, I was thinking to myself, Gibbs or Montgomery? I'd have to give it to Montgomery just because he's such a bull. And just runs people over, and he's got moves. He's strong. He's smart. He's fast. How do you even, if I was Montgomery, I'd be asking for more carries.
Yeah. Well, and watching these games this weekend, I got a chance to go and see the University of Michigan play again. They got the same problem. They got Donovan Edwards and Mullings. And which one do you give the ball to? I mean, both of them ran well against USC, but it looks like Mullings is the home run hitter, a la Gibbs for the Lions, and Montgomery is the every down back.
You know what, though? We were talking about this earlier, Le'Veon Bell, and these running backs that get to 25, 26 years old, and then they get the big contract, and they never do anything.
And they disappear like Kaiser Soze.
It's
poof.
I know, just
They're
done.
gone.
What you got? You got year and a half, 2 years to be an elite running back. You're going to get a Travis Henry or you'll have some freaks in there that can do it, but not many.
So durability.
Yeah.
As we factor all this in, is really coming into focus as a factor, because it is so hard to have a long career. You got to take care of your body.
You can't control durability.
Sometimes.
It's standing around a pile, having somebody roll up on you. It's just having somebody hit you that you didn't see, right?
And you don't think any amount of flexibility training, any amount of preparation can diminish the impact of those injuries?
Whatever training that they've got now, it's the best of the best.
Whatever they've got.
Yeah, stretching and yoga and supplements and diet. The diet that these guys have now
is amazing. It's a fair point. I do think that taking care of your body can minimize the impact, maybe the length of time that you're sitting on the bench.
Sure.
But I agree that there's certain situations you're not going to avoid.
Yeah.
Christian McCaffrey hasn't been able to avoid it. Right. So
Correct.
if we bring this into who are the guys right now playing in the National Football League who have the chance over the course of their career to be considered in this conversation. Obviously, King Henry, Derrick Henry is probably going to be at the current top of the list.
I called him Travis Henry. Sorry.
The Derrick Henry bio starts with a 2,000-yard season. He's one of the 8 players.
Well, do you know this? He's the exact size right now that he was in high school. Can you imagine exact size he is now?
I did not know
he
that.
was as a senior in high school. Maybe he's 5'10", maybe he's 5 pounds heavier. That's how freaking big he was in high school.
Obviously, he went to the University of Alabama. He's a blue blood program player all the way through.
Yeah.
Had an outstanding college career, parlayed that into an outstanding pro career. He played out the string about as long as you could expect anybody to be patient in Tennessee to try to put a championship team around him. Now he moves over to the Baltimore Ravens, where it looks like they are ready for a championship, even though they started out the season 0-2. It looks like they have the pieces that are properly aligned. But he took an $8 million contract. There's guys making, at his position, making twice as much money as him, and he's going for 150 yards.
Yeah, but all these GMs are getting smart with the running backs. I mean, they're not giving guys 10, 15 million a year when they used to a few years back, just because they get hurt.
Well, you're right, and I'll give you the list because there's only 6 of them. Christian McCaffrey, $16 million. Kamara, making $15 million. We'll come back to Kamara because what a nice punch he's been for the Saints this year already. Jonathan Taylor with the Colts, $14 million. Saquon Barkley looking outstanding.
And look what Jonathan Taylor's done since he got his contract. Nothing.
Yeah.
I had him. He was on my fantasy team last year. He sucked. Okay.
Injuries.
Yeah, well, I know it's injuries, but it's funny when people get the money, shit goes sideways.
And Saquon Barkley, was banged up.
Yep.
But when he's in the lineup, Saquon Barkley's in the conversation. I mean, he's a guy that if he can put a full season of this together 2 or 3 times, he's in the conversation. And then Joe Mixon gets almost, and so that's the start of a different conversation. Joe Mixon, he might not even be an every down guy this year if you look at the Houston Texans. I mean, they've got tools all over the place.
Yeah.
You go down that list, DeAndre Swift in Chicago, Tony Pollard, $7.3 million with the Titans. Aaron Jones, who's he's one of the highest average per carry guys ever in the National Football League. Still playing, so that average might go down.
Yeah.
But Aaron Jones is a fantastic football player, moves over to the Vikings, and he's only a $7 million guy. There's guys making double them that are not as productive.
It's been a confusing start to the year for me. Just looking at the teams that are 0-2 or 0-3 or that have won or that aren't winning and the money that they spent. Yeah, we were just talking about that. It's a passing league, right? The NFL's a passing league. Look how important it is to be able to run the football now. Takes pressure off your quarterback. Takes pressure. Offensive linemen hate pass blocking. In general, they hate it. They want to run the football. Oh, you remember that when Manning a few years back, when he got in a fight with his center, it was all on film, it was on YouTube. And the guy's like, let's run the fucking ball.
Yeah,
he goes, when Peyton goes, run the play that I call. Yeah. You're not calling the play. I'm calling the play. Shit like that. They want to run the football.
Well, they do, and it changes the morale, right? I mean, this is why Jim Harbaugh, people go, oh, why is he so successful? He doesn't seem to be a great X's and O's guy. He's a game planner. He understands that if you punch people in the face in the first quarter, in the second quarter, in the third quarter, that bloody nose becomes a broken nose in the fourth quarter, and it's hard to see through a broken nose.
Yeah, as an ex-defensive player, there's nothing like getting the ball run down your throat.
It's demoralizing.
Nothing. There's just nothing. Passes hurt too, but not as bad as a guy getting up there in the backfield and running for 8 yards every time. It's so demoralizing.
I was all over Lincoln Riley on the sideline of that game, Michigan USC.
What do you mean you're all over Lincoln?
I'm watching him, right? Because I hate the thief in the night who runs out of the University of Oklahoma, steals the Heisman candidate quarterback, and goes to USC to La La Land.
Isn't that the new world, Joe?
Thinking he's going to have a beauty pageant career.
That's the new fucking world. That's the NIL.
And
that's the way it
but
works.
What I love about it is that the karma train, the sand is thrown in his face again and again because he can't defend. He brings Alan Grinch over. They want to run Grinch out of town in 5 minutes. They realize that he's supposedly not the guy. Well, guess what? It starts with the head coach. The head coach has to set the tenor. Yeah. And you could see Lincoln Riley had his soul snatched on those drives where in the fourth quarter, where the Michigan offensive line put the road graders down and punched him in the face.
Yeah.
It's going to happen all over the NFL in the same manner. You saw the Dallas Cowboys, even with a valiant comeback, didn't have enough in the fourth quarter because Derrick Henry had been grinding them up for the first three.
It keeps your defense. Let's not forget one of the most important parts. It keeps your defense off the field. Runs the clock. You control the clock. You control the game. You control the plays, everything.
Yeah, so if you look at these guys today, we mentioned a few of them. A guy who spent the whole season injured on the bench last year, Nick Chubb, is one of the highest per carry guys in the NFL. I mentioned Aaron Jones with the Vikings. Per carry matters, right? Because some guys are going to get limited touches. Some guys are going to get a ton of touches. If your yards per carry is extraordinarily high and you're playing with durability over the course of a long career, I think that's a huge factor as we rate running backs. You mentioned Le'Veon Bell has an amazing Pittsburgh Steelers season, and then hard to find him.
Correct.
Almost immediately.
It's weird. We were talking about that little pause that he used to do at Pittsburgh, right? Where
Waiting.
he'd get the ball, he'd wait, and he'd make it work and then get through the line. He tried doing that at other teams in the offense. It probably was just a great offensive line at Pittsburgh. I'm guessing. I can't remember. Pouncey. I can't remember who else played for them. But he tried doing that stuff with the Jets, and it didn't work.
A lot of guys go places where it doesn't work, right? Like,
Yeah.
don't fix it if it ain't broke.
Yeah.
Right? Sometimes trying to chase the big dollars, and it better be the right place where you're chasing those dollars, or it could be a quick end to your career.
I actually think Bijan Robinson could be one of those players.
Yeah.
He's got size, he's got speed, he's got vision, he's got a decent quarterback, good receivers.
Went for almost 1,000 yards in his rookie season.
Yeah.
I mean, I look at some of these guys. Granted, we're talking about a 17-game season now. And that's when we talk about all-time backs, we got to factor some of this in, how many games they actually got to play per season. I really like Buffalo and James Cook, right? Josh Allen has things hitting on all the cylinders. James Cook is a guy who is underrated, I would say. If I'm trying to put my money on things where I'm getting a deal for a guy, James Cook has been a deal for the Buffalo Bills.
At the same time that we talk about being able to run the football being important, it doesn't seem like we value running backs like we used to. We just don't. Even though now we're starting to see you've got to be able to have the run and the pass. You can't just get back there and pass.
Well, and part of that is the fact that quarterbacks are they're backing up the Brinks truck and unloading an ass load of cash.
40, 50 mil a year.
I mean, come on. Christian McCaffrey's making 60. He's the highest paid running back at $16 million. He's probably the MVP for that team last year. He's making $16 million. The quarterback down the road at Green Bay, who he beat, Jordan Love, is making $50 million plus, getting $100 million plus guaranteed in his pocket. That's 7 seasons.
It is
worth of running back money.
But if you're a GM for a team, you're going to give a running back a bunch of money? No. They get hurt all the time.
I'm with you. I get it. And when you find one that's durable, which kind of allows us to start shifting.
Is there a durable running back? No. They all miss games.
You'd have to say that right now, Derrick Henry, full course of his career.
Sure.
And let's talk. I want to mention Alabama for a second because we're going to do an episode about college football programs in the very near future. When Derrick Henry and Alvin Kamara were in the same backfield at the University of Alabama.
Sure.
They also, in that backfield, had NFL player T.J. Yeldon and Kenyon Drake.
Yeah.
4 NFL football players were in the same backfield. So
that's probably all over Alabama, though. Even the backups to their defensive linemen.
4 guys, though, that go high draft pick running backs, and 2 of them are the 2 All-Pros right now, Alvin Kamara and Derrick Henry in the NFL. Yeah. I mean, that's pretty impressive. Now, Saban ran him out of Bama, said he had some problem issues. He ends up bouncing around and ends up at Tennessee.
Look at Jalen Hurts.
But Kamara right now looks special. And he's another guy that people question his heart, people question his durability. He looks like he's the every down guy in New Orleans, and Derek Carr, and they've started to put something together. The New Orleans Saints are a legitimate contender, and I would have written them off as a team that didn't do enough in the offseason.
I was talking to my buddies yesterday, and I was talking to you also. There's no lay down game in the NFL anymore.
None.
Not a one. I don't care if you're playing the Giants. Who do we think's the worst team in the NFL? Giants? Maybe.
I had the Bengals and the Ravens in the AFC Championship game. One of them's 1-2, and the other one's 0-3.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, come on. How
They
do you
just got blown out at home by Washington.
if you're and there's still some games that you can maybe find an edge on in college football if you're a gambler.
Yeah.
If you're a gambler and you're playing NFL football games, you're just stupid.
You're just stupid.
You should go to the craps table where you can back up odds and get yourself close to 50-50. Play blackjack where you can get yourself close to 50-50. If you think you're getting an edge on the sports book analytics players in these major FanDuel, DraftKings, the BetMGM, the casinos, you're not getting over on them, buddy. I looked at Kristen, my wife. A scoreboard popped up during the game, and I looked at it, and I was looking at my phone at BetMGM at the same time. Every score on the NFL scoreboard was within 1 point of the point spread.
Of the line.
At the end of the 1 o'clock games.
That's crazy shit will happen, too. Like, the quarterback will throw it off somebody's helmet, goes up in the air, and they grab it, and they go into cover. If I had money on that, I'd lose my shit. But yeah, I was watching that. And I was like, this is impossible. In over-unders, it's 43.5. And it'll come in at like 43.
4.5 point spread. It's 4, it's 5. It's 4, it's 5. The whole game.
It's impossible.
Yeah.
Unless it's rigged.
Don't get into it.
And we're not even going.
Our good buddy.
Half my buddies are conspiracy theorists. Right? They're like, this shit is rigged. I'm telling you.
Of course, if you're betting on it, you have to look at it and go, how is this possible? In a random series of events, that fumbles, punt returns, in a random series of events.
You're telling me they can calculate that.
With an
fumbles and interceptions.
With a ball that is an oblong spheroid that could bounce anywhere at any minute, depending on the angle it hits at, they're figuring out between 1 point and 1.5 points how every single game is going to end.
Unbelievable.
Our good buddy Gary Rattan down in the Carolinas, the Wayne State sack leader, constant conspiracy theorist. We love him, but I guarantee the ilk of conspiracy theorists that I see on the internet are like, this is not possible. It is not possible that the NFL lines are this close for every game. And then, of course, there's a call that keeps it in that. There's always going to be these conspiracies.
Well, look at the Chiefs game the other night. That was pass interference. They didn't call it in the end zone. They're on the 1 yard line. They go in, they win, they cover. And everybody, all my buddies are saying, these Chiefs, they got to be paying somebody.
Joe Burrow got jammed up on one on T. Higgins on the 2-point conversion that would have changed the complexion of that game. There are big calls, but that's always been the case.
Maybe
we're picking it apart because media coverage now is 24/7, 365. We're up the anus with a micro probe of everything that happens in the football world. And, at the end of the day, do I think games are fixed? Absolutely, games have been fixed. But I don't think it's rampant across the palette of games that you see every week. Let me tell you one thing.
You know what scares me? For years, people used to talk about kids getting paid to play college basketball. And everybody said no. And they were absolutely getting paid cash to play college basketball.
And everybody said for years, to your same point, everybody said there's no way that referees are being paid to fix games. Guess what, NBA? Google the NBA refs who have been indicted for fixing games.
Unbelievable.
It absolutely happens.
That's unbelievable.
So it happens because where there's smoke, there's fire.
So you're telling me there's fire in the NFL?
100%.
Who?
And it's not.
Who do they get to be on their side?
I'm not blaming it.
You think they pay Mahomes?
I'm not blaming it on Roger Goodell. I'm not blaming it on the NFL
he makes
officials.
$50 million a year. Roger Goodell isn't going to do that.
But what I'm saying is I'm not blaming any of this. It's just human nature. If there's money involved and somebody's making the league minimum and they're a long snapper that can make one bad snap that means the whole flipping game, or if they're a kicker, or if they're a DB who can commit one PI. I mean, there's just so many hinge moments in a game.
It's kind of like steroids. Everybody always asks me, they had to use steroids in the NFL. I never saw it, and I never did because I couldn't afford it. I mean, whatever they would have to pay for steroids in the NFL. But do I think that there was suspicious people?
Of course.
Absolutely. Some. I'm not going to say any names, but certain people would get really strong and fast in June when we started running.
There is, in my opinion,
and you're not supposed to.
Right, and you'll never stop people from trying to get an advantage.
No,
you'll never stop.
There's too much money.
You'll never stop big money from interfering with the meritocracy of sports. Right?
True.
It's too much money.
Yeah.
It's quality of life for people.
Yeah.
Human beings are the idea.
The thing that's perplexing to me is thinking, how does that trickle down? Where does it start? It obviously starts with the people that have the money. But the long snapper? How do you get to a long snapper?
It's interesting. I read a lot about. Do you remember a basketball player? He was before our time, but it's a well-known conspiracy. Connie Hawkins, right? No. Connie Hawkins was a basketball player. Was involved in a gambling scandal from the early days when the NBA was just kind of coming into its own.
I kind of remember seeing a special on it or something.
This is like Wilt Chamberlain, Bill Russell era basketball, right? So he's coming out. He's the best player. And all of a sudden, he's barred from playing basketball in the NBA. And it started with him accepting a bus fare, a ticket for a bus from a known guy in New York who was connected to some gamblers. And then the guy asked him if he wanted to be a valet and if he wanted to carry luggage and if he wanted to do this. So he's just doing tasks and getting a little bit of cash for doing little odd jobs for the guy. Well, when that guy gets indicted, he says, well, guess what, prosecutor? I got something to give up for you. I've been paying Connie Hawkins. And Connie Hawkins gets barred from playing in the NBA for years because he got lured in to what was basically odd jobs for a guy, which ended up being proven in a court of law years later when his career was already partially ruined.
That kind of makes sense to me because back in the day, even the football players used to work at the bank or work for a company in sales in the offseason. Now they're making so much money. Would you risk...
It's never the guy who's making so much money. They're not trying to go to Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah, they're going to the long. They're going to the fucking long snapper.
They're going to Christian McCaffrey's backup that isn't making shit, and then he gets in the game and drops the rock.
You're killing me on your conspiracy theory.
It's not a conspiracy theory. What I'm saying is, it's going to happen 1 out of 100 times, 1 out of 1,000 times.
Yeah, but if it does, they can affect a game.
It can absolutely affect a game. Yeah. That's all I'm saying is human nature.
A field goal kicker. You don't think they can affect a game?
It's not the NFL's fault. It's not ESPN's fault. It's not the official's fault. It's human nature. Things are going to happen when money is involved, and you can either say, I bet on the right side of the fix, or I bet on the wrong side of the fix, because it'll be 50-50.
Did you see the Cam Newton interview in the last couple of weeks, or maybe it's the last month, about his dad going in and sitting down with Auburn and saying, yeah, I'd like $200,000.
That's what I need.
By the end of the week. And you can get Cam. It was something like that. I don't know what the number was. But he's like, yeah, that's... So Cam didn't go in. His dad went in.
Yeah.
And said, you know what? Guess what?
This is what we need.
He got paid.
Then make it happen.
He got paid in cash.
We'll rein this in now to my quick list. Mount Rushmore right now. Even with the injuries, I'm going to go Saquon Barkley, Christian McCaffrey. And then I'm going to go... Jonathan Taylor and Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry is probably higher on that list than most of them because of the injuries, and he's rolling it up right now. But if I had to put a team on the field right now, today, Saquon Barkley, Christian McCaffrey, Derrick Henry, Jonathan Taylor.
I like the Christian McCaffrey. I really like Bijan Robinson. I think he's big, he's fast, he seems like he's durable so far, but who knows? I actually have Gibbs up there. I think that he's special. I think he's extremely fast. I think he's the fastest player on the field every time he plays. I mean, right behind him, though, I've got to have the other running back for the Lions. Montgomery. What a bull he is. I mean, carrying piles, 4 or 5 yards after each carry. And those add up. Those 2 or 3 yards after each carry that you get, they add up, and they make a big difference.
Down in distance.
James Cook, we talked about him earlier. Obviously, Derrick Henry.
I think James Cook is the best buy. from a value standpoint for what they're paying him, I think he's the best buy on the board.
I mean, Jonathan Taylor, in my mind, had a horrible year last year. Like I said, I had him on my fantasy team. So, but, maybe he could be that. I'm not sure.
Are we in agreement that Derrick Henry is the only one on this list that gets transferred over to maybe the top 20, top 25 on the all-time GOAT list?
No question.
Okay.
I mean, the other guys are just too young.
Too young. Maybe they'll never get the touches.
Haven't done it long enough. I mean, they've got glimpses of good play, but you got to do it over and over.
You got to do it over and over.
And you can't get hurt.
So playing the running back position in the NFL has changed dramatically. We talked about this becoming a more pass offensive coordinator-led league. We've seen that certainly translated into the coaching trees and how coaches have been hired and spreading these kind of offensive philosophies around the league. So much so that they've actually started debating whether or not cover 2, the Tampa 2, should be legal. Putting 2 deep safeties in formation is restricting the vertical passing game so much. It's so much dink and dunk.
You know what I think it's done too? Is it's made guys like Hutch in rush ends that much more of a priority.
Sure.
Hutch is going to get paid.
Sure.
He ain't getting $15 million.
And quarterbacks that are smart enough to make the quick read, because you're going to have to throw hot.
Yeah.
A lot.
Yeah, look at the other game. What do you have, 4.5 sacks in one game? That's unheard of.
Yeah.
That's never even happened.
It's
because he doesn't have to worry about the run.
If you can't identify
the quarterback.
If you cannot identify the blitz and throw the ball to the hot route without throwing picks to the house, then you're going to put your team in a much better position.
Yeah.
What happened in the evolution of the game, though, is when we go back to when NFL football was more of a coach's game, was more of a scheme game, was more of a put your defense together and defense wins championships, every defensive cliche you can muster up. The running game was much more focused on the marquee players, from the galloping ghost of Red Grange forward to Jim Brown and the Cleveland Browns. That era, those eras of football, much more running back centric.
Yeah.
Right. The Lombardi, student body left, student body right.
They even changed the rules. You can't touch anybody after 5 yards. That was never the case. It's a passing game. Even though you have to be able to run the football, it's still a passing game.
Well, we're taking all this into account. Again, when we kind of factor all the dimensions, all the algorithm variables that go into deciding who's number one. We've talked about a couple key ones. Durability. You have to have played a longer career, right? You can't just have a minute on the scene. You have to have had Pro Bowl seasons, MVP seasons. Does a running back, and this is a key component to our debate here, does a running back have to have a championship in their resume the way a quarterback does, because leadership is so important for a quarterback?
For what?
To be considered the GOAT. To be considered the GOAT.
No.
Too much is out of the running back's control.
I'm trying to think of an example. Well, look at Thurman Thomas.
Well,
he never won a Super Bowl.
We're going to have a lot of them. Barry Sanders never won a Super Bowl. O.J. Simpson never won a Super Bowl. Eric Dickerson. Dickerson didn't win a Super Bowl.
Earl Campbell didn't win a Super Bowl.
Earl Campbell didn't win a Super Bowl. Adrian Peterson did not win a Super Bowl. Yeah. Derrick Henry has not won a Super Bowl. Yeah. Right? You can go right down the list of some of these guys who are considered some of the greatest. They do not have a Super Bowl on their resume.
Yeah. Obviously, we're Lions fans, and everybody's saying, the Lions are going to the Super Bowl. Do you know how many things have to go right for the Lions to make the Super Bowl? I mean, last year, we could have 5 out of 6 of those last games we could have lost.
Yeah.
It's not like we're blowing out people 30-10 or 45-20. They were like 17-14.
No,
they were 20-19.
You were talking about Bijan Robinson, the Atlanta Falcons.
Yeah.
Did you hear Kirk Cousins' interview? In the last 4 or 5 years, he's missed the playoffs by 1 game. In every one of those every one of the losses, he could come down to 1 play that cost them 1 game. So really, making the playoffs or not making the playoffs for a lot of teams can be distilled down to 1 play that didn't go their way.
Look at the Lions game last week. That right before half, he threw it off the helmet. Guy picked it up, ran it in for a touchdown. They called the 2-minute warning.
Yeah, changes the game entirely.
Dude,
And I have to, from the naked eye, I thought it was simultaneous. I thought it was a bad call.
But they called it. They did call it. They blew the whistle. So at
But
least
there
they
was
called
it wasn't like the whistle changed the dynamic of them running after him.
No.
He was going to the
He
house.
was going, yeah. It was a touchdown.
Yeah,
No
you have to
question.
be fair and objective.
Yeah.
He was going to the house. Not that the Lions wouldn't have still found a way to win that game,
Yeah.
but it would have
would've
changed
been
the
a
complexion of
different
the
game.
moment for sure.
No question.
So if we go back, I think the debate is going to come down to a few of these guys at the top, but I want to mention a couple. There are 8 2,000-yard rushers. Some of them shock a lot of people. One of them is Chris Johnson. A lot of people don't remember much. Tennessee Titans. He was in a middle market team. His first 3 seasons, he went to the Pro Bowl. He did that 5 times. He was comeback player of the year when he came back with Arizona late in his career. But he's a 2,000-yard rusher that people don't think about. Jamal Lewis from Tennessee in 2003 was a 2,000-yard rusher for the Baltimore Ravens, a very stacked defensive team, but he got 2,000 yards on the ground. There are guys like Eric Dickerson who kind of went through their career in what would you say, an unsexy manner?
Yeah, and he
right?
actually didn't have good players around him.
Very
Not
rarely.
that many.
Very
Not that
rarely.
many.
He's another one that had a 2,105 yards. He had the greatest single season, and it was a 16-game season, not a 17-game season like the ones that we're seeing today. Amazing about Dickerson, he had a season where he averaged 131 yards per game and 5 consecutive All-Pro teams. O.J. Simpson, though, is the one that is the most shocking. He goes for 2,000 yards in 1973. And I know a lot of people have a lot of feelings about O.J. Simpson.
Mm-hmm.
But in 1973, on a bad football team, he goes for 2,000 yards in 14 games. It was a 14-game season back then. That's remarkable.
But remember that time too is when they would hand off to a running back 25 to 35 times a game.
Agreed.
You know?
Agreed.
But no, it's a great feat. But it's just different. I mean, what would happen if we gave Jahmyr Gibbs the ball 30 times a game?
Would he make it through a game getting it 30 times a game? Number
don't
one.
know.
The way the size and speed of defensive players.
I don't know.
I mean, people don't understand. You watch the old days, and we talk about the difference like with rugby and Australian rules. The reason why those guys don't get the kinds of concussions that the NFL does is because of the helmet.
Sure.
Right? When I'm wearing a helmet, I use my head as a weapon. When I'm not wearing a helmet, I protect my head. This is like logical stuff, but somehow it still gets mythologized like those sports are tougher because they don't wear helmets. Not the case. And moreover, when guys had like paper thin helmets back in the day, they also didn't do the things that train wrecks and car crashes of today. You got guys that are going 4.4 seconds over 40 yards in the defensive backfield that are 215 to 225 pounds. They're a missile, a human missile.
I tell you all the time, and people ask me, what do you? I kind of miss concussions a little bit.
Just the
dizziness. I miss the feeling of that euphoria a little bit, or I don't know. But I do miss the feeling
this is where the parents take the children away from the concussions are not a good thing.
Yeah. No, I miss it. That part, you'll never have it again, right? Once you play football, you'll never, in any sport, never have. It's maybe not the concussion, just that feeling of getting a good lick in.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
The sweet spot.
Just when you hit the sweet, and you feel and maybe you have a concussion, but you don't feel it.
Yeah. I'm with you. I'm with you. We've read a lot about guys. The segue here from concussions is getting into the career of some guys who had their careers shortened, but were still outstanding players. Terrell Davis went for 2,000 yards in 1998. We look at Terrell Davis, Super Bowl champion.
Yeah.
But everybody who came before him and after him in that offense also went for 1,000 yards and 5 yards a carry. The Shanahan running game plugged in whoever had a helmet, and they got 100 yards per game.
Yeah.
So he's a hard one. Gale Sayers really only played 5 seasons. 5 All-Pro teams, right? 6 touchdowns in a game, 5 yards per carry, which is insane. 5 yards per carry is insane over an NFL career. But he only really plays 5-6 seasons for the Chicago Bears. My father would tell you Gale Sayers is the best football player he ever saw, but he only played 5 or 6 seasons. So how far up the list can he get?
Yeah.
The same thing, in my opinion, goes for some of the guys who had great championship teams and didn't need to get the ball as often. Franco Harris, Jim Taylor with the Lombardi Packers. Jim Taylor wins the league MVP award in 62. Franco Harris wins 4 Super Bowls. I mean, you can't argue with their resumes, but they didn't have to do as much on great teams.
No.
Emmitt Smith, I would argue, I know you're going to argue this one because you played against him and got to appreciate his excellence up close and personal. But I look at Emmitt Smith and say he had the greatest offensive line of all time, and he only averaged 3.9 yards per carry.
And let's not forget, he had one of the best defenses of all time, and he had Deion Sanders. I mean, nobody could move the ball against him.
Yeah.
So they always had the ball. They'd get a lot of turnovers also. So, yeah, I mean, I guess that has to go. When I talk about my all-time list, I talk about guys that I just see that could just ball kind of no matter where they're at. I mean, obviously Barry's number one. He's just the most gifted athlete that I've ever seen do crazy stuff.
5 yards a carry.
Yeah, but the stuff that he did, I mean, he would run 30 yards in a 5-yard carry and never get touched.
10 years, never less than 1,300 yards. Nobody will ever do that again.
Yeah.
Nobody ever will play a decade and never have under 1,300 yards. He went for over 2,000 in 97, and he was the league's MVP in 97, which is a feat unto itself because the quarterback era had already begun.
Yeah, and we were still decent in 97. We had a good team, but, I mean, it's not like we had the offensive line that Dallas had. You put him with that Dallas defense, behind that Dallas offensive line, with Troy Aikman as a quarterback, I don't know. Could he have run for 2,500 yards? Probably.
Larry Allen in front of him? You're damn right he could have gone for 2,500.
They had great receivers, great tight end. They were solid.
You had a good team, but he had to dodge 2 tacklers before he got to the line of scrimmage on 1 out of 3 plays.
Yeah.
It was not a dominating offensive line.
No.
It was good.
No, but he had a decent quarterback and really good receivers. We had really good receivers, so that helped a little bit. But number 2, I have Emmitt Smith. I mean, obviously.
Where do you slot in LaDainian Tomlinson? And let me give you.
I've got him at number 10.
Got him at 10. Okay. I'm glad you had him in the top 10 because he's an MVP in 2006. Okay. When he had 31 touchdowns.
Yeah.
But he went 1,200 yards 7 years in a row and had 1,100 in the 8th. Right. So another one where you look at his career and the number of touchdowns he scored on a team that was never in great contention for a Super Bowl. They were good, but they were never great. LaDainian Tomlinson's an underrated career.
Yeah, I would agree. Number 3, I've got Eric Dickerson. I mean, I can't imagine him running at you playing linebacker. The guy was 6'3", probably 230, 225, 230.
Yeah. And fast. He was a track fast.
4, I have Marshall Faulk. For obvious reasons, very crafty, very fast, very quick, won a Super Bowl. And then I got AP. Can you imagine playing defense against Adrian Peterson? The guy just ran over people.
He's the last one to mention on the 2000 list. In 2012, he went for 2,000 yards. In that season, he averaged, wait for it, 6 yards per carry.
And he ran mean. He ran mean.
Oklahoma Sooner.
Yeah.
Born and bred.
Then I've got Walter Payton. Obviously, never played against him, but saw him play a lot in the 80s when I was young.
Walter Payton, the only player, this is another one that'll never happen again. 1977, he wins the MVP award for basically a losing team.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's how good Walter Payton was.
What was it? They won the Super Bowl in 85?
85,
right? I got Curtis Martin on here. How many 2,000 yard? I mean, probably at least over 1,200 yard seasons.
Curtis Martin's a great, the one that I'll throw in here, again, from my father's era is Lenny Moore. He's a 7 yards a carry guy for 3. I mean, some of these guys.
Yeah, when did he play?
That's the 50s. That's the Colts. That's the, early days. That's Shula's first time around. Okay. Edgerrin James was another Colt.
I got Edgerrin James on
that doesn't get a lot of run. Roger Craig gets forgotten because he's on the great San Francisco 49ers team with Montana and Jerry Rice. Marshawn Lynch more recently in beast mode for Seattle. But the one that I can't believe is number 3 on the all-time rushing list is Frank Gore. Frank Gore, a guy who never broke the bank on a contract, a guy who was never considered the best player on his team, let alone one of the best running backs of all time. Frank Gore talk about a guy who gets short shrift. He's average, and his yards per carry was better than Emmitt Smith's.
Yeah. No, I remember watching him play, just very crafty, very fast. Obviously stayed healthy. That's the biggie. I mean, look, a lot of these guys play 5-6 years, have a bad injury, they're done.
Yeah, I'll give you my favorites. My favorites, because they're not going to make my Mount Rushmore. My favorites were Earl Campbell, my all-time favorite player, just demolished people. The Tyler Rose from Texas. John Riggins from the Washington, then Redskins, now Commanders. I always modeled my own running style after Riggins. Marcus Allen was the clutch running back for the Raiders and the Chiefs, stretching through the Tom Flores era. Every big game, the first running back, Marcus Allen, that would catch the ball out of the backfield and beat you just as easily as he did running the football. And then the last of my favorites list would be Larry Zonka. Very early on in my life, watching those great Dolphins teams at the end of his career, Larry Zonka was another punishing runner. So that's my favorites list. I'm with you on all of the selections that kind of go into the top 5 space. I'm looking at Eric Dickerson.
Yeah. All my selections are newer that I watched more, it seems, obviously.
The 2 that I have in there that you don't are O.J. Simpson, for the reasons I mentioned.
Yeah.
For playing for a bad football team and still finding a way to make the magic happen. And Jim Brown, who I've watched a lot on film, but never had the chance, obviously, to see in person. Jim Brown, not only in his 9 seasons went to 9 Pro Bowls, he won the rushing title 8 times and was a 3-time MVP and also won a Super Bowl or an NFL championship at the time. Jim Brown also at Syracuse was an All-American in lacrosse and an All-American decathlete and averaged 18 points a game as a basketball player on their varsity basketball team at Syracuse. He was a 4-sport guy, qualified for the national team in the decathlon, and as a lacrosse player was so good as an All-American and second leading scorer in the nation that they literally changed lacrosse rules to make it so that he couldn't pin the ball to his chest and just run over everybody people to the goal. Okay. So Jim Brown, I think, goes down as more than just a football player, a historical athlete, and of course, Walter Payton, sweetness, is the best every down back that I've ever seen. The best pass catcher of the screen pass and runner on the screen pass that there will ever be. So that's where my list comes in. We'll post this on the website. Any final running back thoughts? Anybody that didn't get mentioned? Jamal Charles, 5.4 yards per carry. Yeah. Nobody ever mentions Jamal Charles.
No.
But Jamal Charles is the all-time leader as far as having a minimum of 5 or 6 years. I mean, 5.4 yards a carry.
I'm a little bit of a homer. I just saw Barry Sanders do stuff that no one else can do. No one else can do. And he never, I think I mentioned this on a different podcast that we had, but he very rarely ever missed his blocking assignments either. He didn't have many of them, but he'd have to pick up people. And just an amazing athlete, just the best. Could make something out of nothing, and I've never seen anything like him.
Other guys of your era, did you have an appreciation up close and personal with Jerome Bettis?
No.
Okay.
No.
And how about Bo Jackson?
No. Thank God. I mean, can you imagine?
But a 3-year career.
We don't have Bo Jackson on here, but Spielman used to say that, and there's a play that they always play on YouTube where he runs over Spielman and goes for like 80 yards. Spielman said, I had no shot at tackling him. And Spielman could tackle anybody.
Not only did he average 5 yards a carry, like all the great ones are in that 5 yards a carry space, but he had touchdown runs of 88, 91, and 92.
Wow. Sick.
4-year career for Bo Jackson, and of course, Kansas City Royals baseball player.
Yeah, but look at his freak accident. We talk about injuries all the time. What a freak injury that you pull your hip out of place, right? He gets his, and it didn't even look bad. It looked like nothing when he got tackled. He just yanked it at the perfect time. He's done. He never played again. Never saw the field.
It would also be remiss if we didn't mention, may he rest in peace, Mercury Morris recently passed, another Super Bowl champion on the perfect team, the undefeated Dolphins team with Larry Zonka, probably the greatest backfield of all time in the NFL. 2 1,000-yard rushers, Thunder and Lightning, the first Thunder and Lightning backfield, Larry Zonka, the Thunder, and Mercury Morris, the Lightning.
Okay. Well, it sounds like they got to be on the list.
They're on the list. That's the greatest backfield. I'm going to go 3, 2, 1. All right? Because I think ours are different.
Okay.
My 3, 2, 1, Sanders 3, Peyton 2, Jim Brown 1.
Well, you know who I have 1. It's Sanders. 3, I've got Eric Dickerson. 2, I've got Emmitt Smith.
Emmitt Smith. You son of a bitch. Sneaking Emmitt Smith in there with the all-time leading rusher. Is that what gets it done?
Super Bowls.
3.9 yards
Super
per
Bowls
carry.
And durability.
3.9. I'll give you that. 15 years.
And durability.
There's no doubt about the durability.
Yeah.
You got me there. Well, let's throw Jerome Bettis in there just for the buses. He's the greatest running back in the history of Detroit public school football.
Yeah. I see him once in a while. See him at a game or see him at MGM or see him walking around.
Let's raise our glasses, our cans one more time to our Barry Sanders. Hits our top 3 for both of them. He's right here with us. You played with him. We'll see him soon. So there's another episode of Goat Quest rendered directly to you, our faithful audience, mediocrely researched, expertly produced. We crack the beer with the beer man. This is Joe Willie. Thank you very much. You can go to the show notes, look for us on Apple, Spotify, Podbean, YouTube, everywhere that you look for podcasts. We're going to try to be there. Amen and hallelujah. Goat Quest. We'll see you again soon.